Hi, I'm Trisha at Club Scrap with the Book in a Faux Book project, and this is a really gorgeous little book, and I've decorated it with the Club Scrap Falling Leaves page kit. We have actually put together a few of these kits for you ready-made so that all the elements that you need to embellish and decorate the book are included, or if you're just following along with the instructions and supplying your own paper, the project will work just fine as well. And any Club Scrap page kit is great for supplying the art elements and other embellishments that you need. Plus, I've also added some of the little leaf dies from a thin cutting die set that we have available while supplies last. Well, this book is actually, it looks like a regular book, and then inside there's an opening, so that's where the faux book is. It's not really a book. And then we have an actual book here that's glue-free, so this spine completely can be removed and the book stretches out like an accordion. So lots of fun elements in here, things you can use again and again as your skill set to help make other projects as well. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to begin by prepping a piece of folding board. You can also use an extremely heavy piece of cardstock for this too, but since we have the folding board, I thought it would be a wonderful product to use on this project. It gives us a nice firm heavy-duty cover without having to wrap any boards. All right, so we're going to place this folding board into the trimmer so that it bends easily from top to bottom. So with the folding board, if you push inward on this is very highly resistant. This way, if I push in, it folds more easily. And by easily, I mean it still is quite stiff, but this is almost impossible. Okay, so it's going to bend easily from top to bottom. So place it in your trimmer, and we will cut this at 7 inches. You can take this large 7-inch piece and put it in pocket A of an accordion pocket file. So I'm going to use the accordion pocket file that I normally use to create cards and layouts. I'm going to use it for this project to help keep each segment of the project organized. Then we have this 5 by 12 inch piece remaining on the right side of our trimmer base. Let's trim that horizontally at 8.5 and 5. Okay, the square that you end up with is actually a scrap. I'm going to pop that in pocket D for didn't use. And then I have 2 other pieces that will eventually become your book covers. Let's file those in pocket C. Okay, now we have 2 pieces of the same color. And for this particular project, it's cream. And we need to place these into the trimmer so that the papers, you can trim these at the same time, by the way. The paper should dip easily from left to right. Okay, let's cut this at 9 inches. Now this piece will eventually be scored and then trimmed again, so I'm just going to set it aside and grab the smaller 2 strips that are to the right of your trimmer blade, place them in the trimmer horizontally, and cut at 9 and 4.5. So there are 4 pieces that are the same size if you count, the 2. You cut them 2 at a time. I'm going to put these also in pocket D for decorating material. So I guess my do not use a decorating material are in the same pocket. And then I do have 2 squares that weren't used. Of course, you can use these in the finished book. So D for decorating. I'm going to grab 3 more papers of all different colors. You, of course, could use all the same colors as well, but I like the variety that this creates. I'm going to place them all into the trimmer so that they dip easily from top to bottom. I think I can trim all 3 of these at the same time. If you don't feel comfortable with that, of course, just trim them one at a time. Again, dipping easily top to bottom in the trimmer base. We'll cut at 10. It's going to sound different. And 5. And when you trim 3 pieces at a time, just really make sure you're pushing firmly on this bar. Okay. So all 6 of these pieces that I made that are 5 by 12, I'm going to set those aside. And this goes in pocket D because I didn't really use it. Now I'm going to take a printed sheet of paper. So if you're using your own papers, this is a great time to use a print, and the plan for this print is for it to be used on the outside cover of the book. So the way you put this in the trimmer may reflect your plan for how you want that print to lay out. In this case, I want, for this Falling Leaves cream print, I want the rays coming in from the upper right corner and the bolder leaves on the left side of my paper. And this time we will cut at 6 3/4. And then I'll rotate this 6 3/4 inch piece so it's horizontal and cut at 11 1/4, 6, and 5 1/4. So these 3 pieces, the most recently created pieces, form the back cover, the spine cover, and the front cover, or you could switch it around and do it like this. It's really up to you, but all 3 of these will be placed in pocket A, along with the other little spine cover for the inside of the book. Now you have one larger piece that's remaining, so let's go ahead and trim this horizontally at 6 3/4. This will end up being the inside cover of the book, and that will be placed in pocket A. And then you have, this is essentially a square, so it's up to you how you want to trim it, but I'll cut it at 3 3/4. Okay, so now we have one more piece for pocket A, and this other piece is a scrap. I'll place it in D. Our next piece is a beautiful brown print from the Falling Leaves collection, and I'm going to place this into the trimmer so that it dips easily from left to right. So let's trim that at 8 3/4 and 5 1/2. Rotate the 5 1/2 so it's horizontal and cut at 10 and 5. Okay, these 2 pieces will be placed in pocket C, and then this goes in D. Now you have 2 more pieces that are the same size and they'll be cut the same way, so stack them neatly together and place them horizontally in the trimmer and cut at 9 1/2 and 4 3/4. You should have made 4 pieces that are the same size. Those will go in D. And then these are scraps. I'll put these in one area of D, or you can just have a separate scrap pile. It's entirely up to you. I like to keep all the scraps together because you never know, you could probably use them. Finally, we have one more piece. This is, again, another brown, but it's plain in this case, and it needs to go into the trimmer, dipping easily from top to bottom. We'll cut at 7. And then rotate the 7 by 12 so it's horizontal and trim at 11 3/4 and 7. I'm going to rotate this 7 by 7 so it's back to dipping easily top to bottom, and I'll cut at 3 1/2. Stack these 2 pieces and place them in pocket C. And now I have another rectangle. Let's place this rectangle horizontally into the trimmer and cut at 6 1/2 and 3 1/4. These 2 pieces should be the same size, and they are, going in pocket D. There are a few little scraps here we can get rid of. The initial, and this little guy here. Now I have one long strip remaining. Let's trim this horizontally at 8 3/4. And 6 5/8. Now 6 5/8 is halfway between 6 1/2 and 6 3/4. So here's 6 1/2, and I'm just going to go halfway further to the left toward the 7. So there's 6 1/2, 6 5/8. I wouldn't do this if it wasn't necessary. This is going to become the book spine. I'm placing this in pocket C. And then here are 2 pieces that remain. This skinny one is kind of a scrap, and this other one can be another matte panel, and that goes in pocket D. And that concludes the trimming portion. Now I'm going to substitute my score pal for the trimmer, but keep the trimmer handy if we'll need it one more time. I have my score pal with a bone folder that is my personal bone folder. I prefer this over the plastic one that's included with the score pal, especially for these heavy duty scoring jobs. Speaking of, this is the piece of black folding board that is in pocket A, so might as well start right here back at the beginning. We'll score this twice as it will become the outside cover of our book. So score it 5 1/2. And when you do that, just push firmly, and you may want to do a repeat. And then 6 1/2. So that's just an inch apart, creating a 1-inch spine. This is a wonderful size structure if you think about it. I'm using the base of a 12-inch sheet of paper with a 1-inch spine. It makes the perfect book cover. And I'll just replace this back in pocket A. Now remember when I had you set aside the 2 cream pieces that were quite large? Let's grab those and place them into the trimmer so they're vertical. In other words, the measurement at the top should read 9 and you'll be at 12 down at the bottom. The paper should bend easily left to right, and I'm using both sheets at the same time. Of course, if you don't feel comfortable with that, just do it one at a time. That's absolutely fine. And we're going to score across here every 1.5 inches. So let's start at 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, and 7.5. Okay, now what's really important is that you take this piece and bring what's right at the bottom, just flip it and bring it up to the top. And now we're going to add a score line in between each of our existing score lines, starting at 3/4 of an inch. Then go to 2 1/4, 3 3/4, 5 1/4, 6 3/4, and 8 1/4. So now what I have is an every other score. I have an indentation and a bump, indentation and a bump. And by prepping it that way, this is going to accordion fold beautifully. In order to form the long and the short walls of our faux book, we're going to put this back into the trimmer. Hopefully you have that handy. Put it in there horizontally and cut it 6 3/4. So now you have long walls, short walls. You can place all of this into pocket A. Now let's prep the inside pages. Remember when we trimmed I think these are 5 by 12s. I guess we'll grab them 2 at a time, place them in horizontally into the score pal, and we'll score it 3.5 and 10.5. Flip the paper and score at 7. Then let's repeat that for the other 2 pieces. So that's 3.5, 10.5, flip bottom to top, and score at 7. All of these pieces can be filed into pocket B. We're going to need our score pal 1 or 2 more times, but for now let's set this aside and get to work on making the outside cover of our book. For this part of the project, you'll want some liquid club scrap bookbinding glue in a needle tip applicator, your regular favorite adhesive, and a bone folder. And I think we'll start out by just prepping our book cover. And normally we would put the bump of the score on the inside of the fold, but we're going to reverse that for the folding board since it's just such a stiff product, and it works a little bit better to put the bump on the outside of the fold. The paper is less likely to break. So position this horizontally in front of you with your bumps facing up. So this is just a little bit contrary to what we normally do. And if you're following along with the Falling Leaves particular kit, you can arrange this onto the cover in the way that you think. So I've puzzled this back together, and I think I'll go this route with my positioning. Notice how the print is just sort of reassembled here. So you have a cover, and a spine. Then take your adhesive and apply it to each piece and center it within the scored area on the cover. Remembering this is going to be the front cover. Then flip it over, and now we've got the back cover. So front cover, back cover. And we will take the remaining 2 pieces that are of this size and add our inside cover. So I think, yes, I want it this way. So this is the inside front cover, but don't put this piece in the back cover. I've got a plan for that. And then we have this little spine piece here. This last piece that you have that's cream will end up in the middle of this back cover, but I'm not going to add that until I have my little box frame made with this accordion folded pieces. So next what we're going to do is take each of the 4 pieces that we have, 2 long, 2 more narrow, 2 short, and then we're going to fold on the accordion by burying the bump of each score line. So I have kind of a neat way to do this. If you place one of the papers in front of you so it's vertical, and at the top you have an indentation and the next fold is a bump. So what I like to do is fold in on the bump, that's the second fold, and fold back on that bump. So you've just made 1 pleat. Okay, now here's another bump. I'm going to fold back on the bump and then bury this bump. That's another pleat. I hope you can see that. It's so fast. Here's a bump. So fold back on the bump, back on the pleat to make a pleat. Look at us go. See how nice that works? You know, it's the things that you do over and over again where you come up with ideas like this. So it doesn't happen overnight. And as I'm making these pleats, I'm making sure that they're stacking really neatly. So you need to cover any, you know, humanity that occurs during the scoring process. You want this folded piece to be as straight as possible. Each pleat to be the same exact size, and the edge of those pleats to kind of land in the same exact spot. So very, very nice pleated accordion. And all you need to do is repeat that for the remaining pieces. So again, to review, vertically in front of you with your score lines running this way. First score is an indentation. The next one is a bump. Start by folding the bump and back to bury the other bump and make your first pleat. Continue like this with the remaining 3 pieces. And you can also burnish these creases once you're done with it. I find it most efficient to just do all the burnishing at the same time. Okay, so now we have 2 short and 2 long. Eventually, these are going to all interlock with the long walls on the sides and the short walls at the top and the bottom, okay? So they just need to interlock, and this reminds me a lot of how the accordion pocket file that I used to create my organizer for scrapbooking comes into play. So I'm basically holding these so that one long wall and one short wall so that the flaps are facing in. And I'm going to weave them together. So this is going to be just interlocked. Each valley, each mountain fold goes into a valley. So all of those folds get interlocked. And there's a little flap on the front, and then there's a back flap like this. Should I show you that one more time? So they get, and it's good if you just push them together a little bit, but not tightly. That way you can thread each piece into its appropriate valley. You want to make sure it's running every other one, just like that. Now, if you happen to have some binder clips, bring those in. They can act as a third hand for you to hold this together so you can still make adjustments without actually gluing anything down. Like one example is that I accidentally connected a long wall to a long wall. Won't be able to do that. So that way I could undo it just because I had clipped it rather than glued it right away. So I'm going to take the other long wall. And I want to match what's happening here. So this flap here remains on top. So I'll thread that. Let me turn it so you can see. This first flap goes inside the first valley here. Just kind of squeezing together. Look at that. Just, you know, maybe you can tell I've done this just a couple of times. Experience does help. Just kind of stick with it until you get it lined up and clip it. So now I just have one short wall left to add, and I'm going to match what's happening here by putting this outer flap on the outside. And I'll just work one corner at a time. And do the same here. Oh, I have 2 walls in there. You'll be really glad you did not adhere anything, especially when you get to that last wall, because you kind of need to, you know, force that paper to go where you want it. Okay, so now just kind of double check everything. I've got a flap here and a flap on the top, and then the opposite is true on the back side. I just like to do it so they're consistent. Okay, so now I have this one corner that's not clipped. If you don't have clips for all of it, it's okay. Just work one corner at a time. And I'll take my bookbinding glue and just add a little tack down to that corner. Only that corner. Do not glue anything in between there, just that corner. And then you can flip everything over and add some to this corner to tack it down. That's all you're doing, is just tacking the corner. And if you want, then you can just swap out a clip. And now I have another corner that I can tack. Same process till all 4 corners are attached. all 4 corners have been tacked down, and now I can sort of expand this accordion back out so it's a little bit taller, like I'm after that. But those corners hold everything in place. That is why you don't want to apply any adhesive any place other than those outer joint flaps. That's it. That's all you want for your adhesive here. And then you can kind of decide, you know, which way do you want facing up in your book. So let's bring that spine cover back in. And this can either sit this way or I can flip it that way. I'm going to go so that my longer flaps are visible. And this is where I want it to live. So I'll just flip it over and apply the bookbinding glue to the entire outside edge of this frame. Okay, so I'll look from above, kind of aim for the center of this scored area on the inside back cover of the spine. Luckily that liquid adhesive gives me some time to work with it rather than just bonding immediately as if you were using a dry, like a ATG or a score tape. This gives me some opportunity to make an adjustment. Okay, now the opening that's here in the back should be exactly the size you need it to be in order to fit this piece. So let me get that back out of there. And I'll apply some just regular adhesive to this and place it back down into the middle of my frame. Nice. Now we still haven't really bent our book cover, so just do this carefully. Bend those lines at a 90-degree angle in order to help form the book cover. And again, by putting kind of disobeying the rule of where the bump of the score line goes, we're putting the bump on the outside, and that just gives us a better looking spine. Folding board is just a different animal. By the way, we do that folding board in a beautiful copper, like a hammered copper, and a stainless steel finish. And there you have your beautiful finished book cover, and now we need to make the inner book. If you take everything out of pocket B, you'll find you just have a bunch of assorted colors of inside pages that are already scored. And you'll see 3 equally sized scored areas plus 1 additional flap. So your next task is to simply fold on those score lines. So you're making a tri-fold plus a tab. And you can go ahead and do that for all 6 of those papers. As you're doing this, make sure that the bump of the score does go on the inside of the fold. So again, the raised part of the score, bury it. Okay, so now you have a series of 3 different colors, and each one of these pieces has this narrow flap. So you can take, let's just start with red. You can do any color you want, and maybe you've used the same, it's just entirely up to you. And if you just place it in front of you so that the narrow tab is up at the top, and then let's take the next color and just flip it so that the narrow tab is on the left. And then take an orange and keep it so the narrow tab is on the right. And then we'll go back to red, we'll keep it so the narrow tab is on the left. And then brown with narrow tab on the right, and orange with narrow tab on the left. That way we have a plan for when we glue all of this together for our accordion to be formed as we go. So now I have this edge and I have this tab, so I'm going to glue this tab to this. So I'll begin by putting some adhesive on the brown tab. And bookbinding glue works well for this as well because it gives me that opportunity to make some adjustments. And I'm just going to glue this right to the back where I'd planned. And as you glue, just make sure that your edges are as neat as possible. And I will say I'm a little bit less than thrilled with some of my work here. But part of it is just simply because I'm doing it on video and I don't take the time I should to ensure. So basically what's happening is this is connecting end to end, okay? And then I will adhere, I'll put some glue on this tab and attach it to this side. So I'm basically doing it kind of like a book. I had my plan, I'm just turning it page by page and just always adhering the tabs. So here, this tab. So I basically just turned those pages like a book, and each time I came up with the tab, I glued it in its planned position, kind of switching every other one. And now the entire thing should be perfectly strung together into a nice accordion. That's a real quick way to do this, make an incredibly long piece out of several small pieces, and these were all 12 inches long, so there was minimal cutting, just a little bit of a scoring involved, and I have my wonderful inside pages of my book. We'll set this aside and make the book covers. Once you empty pocket C, you'll have everything you need to make the covers and the spine of the glue-free book. First of all, the book board ends up being the boards of the cover, and that should match the size of your inside pages. Clever, right? And then you'll have some narrow, taller pieces, and you'll have some wider pieces, and then a single. That will become the spine. So let's just set that aside and focus on making our covers for now. So what we'll do is begin with the tall pieces. I'm going to center, just visually center, doesn't have to be exact. I'm going to center one of these black boards onto the narrow brown plane. Once I have it centered, I'm going to take the flap that's sticking up and I'm going to wrap it around the board. Same at the bottom. If you want to like make a little score line first, you can. I don't even know if that's necessary. Just wrap it around the board. And then repeat that for the other board. Once you have that done, you can remove the papers and set them aside, and then grab the prints that you have and put them plain side up. And once again, you'll place the boards over the papers, but this time they'll be wide. So if you have it rotated the wrong direction, the height won't be right. You want the top and the bottom edges to be the same height as the brown paper that you're working with. And this time we're going to wrap around from left to right to create some long tabs. You'll once again remove the boards, and now you have these 4 papers with flaps, and we'll miter the corners of each flap. So that means we're going to cut at around a 45-degree angle to the score, just to make our assembly of the glue-free cover a little easier. So you can see how I did that. I have these little angled cuts, and then I'll repeat that for all 4 of the pieces that I have here. All right, so we have these little triangles. We can set all those aside, and now is the fun part. I love this part. So what we can do is just take one of the printed pieces and wrap it around like it was, and then take one of the long skinny pieces and shove it in the area between the board and the paper. And then flip around, and then you'll do the same thing from the other side. This may require you to like bend the paper a little bit just to kind of get it tucked in there. But look at that. You now have a beautifully wrapped cover. Okay, so to review, take the board and put it inside with our long flaps. I like to wrap the long flaps first because it's easier to tuck in a short flap. So just shove it between the 2 layers and then go to the other end and tuck that last flap down in between the paper and the board. Look at that, 2 beautiful covers. We're going to need our score pal, and we'll score our spine piece. What I want you to do is place it horizontally into your score pal and score it at 3, and then rotate it so it's horizontal again and score at 3. It's just kind of an odd measurement. If you're not comfortable with scoring at 3 and then 3 5/8, it's just another way to do it. So either score at 3 and 3 5/8, or just score 3 inches from each edge. Okay, now you have your spine, so you can fold by burying those bumps. Next, we need to do some mitering, both of the spine and of our cover. I'm going to grab my grid ruler. Now, a lot of you ask about this 8x8 square ruler that we have, and you see all these lines. We've got a 60-degree angle, we've got a 45-degree angle. I'm going to show you a way that I use this to create nice, consistent angles. So here's my 60-degree angle. I'm going to rest that line along my cover here so that the 60-degree line is level with the top edge of my spine, and I'm going to draw a line. That means that this line is at 60 degrees, and I can repeat that. Here we go. I'll repeat that for the remaining side. So what I'm doing is just finding that spot on the ruler where the edge creates that angle. So now I have these 4 60-degree angled lines. Now, does it have to be at 60 degrees? No, you can just literally take your scissors and miter the corners by cutting at an angle toward the score of the spine. There's one. You can totally eyeball this. I used the ruler so that it would be prettier. That's all. It's the only reason why. So now all my angles match. So now my spine is ready to help hold my book together. I'm going to do the same treatment on this accordion folded piece. So I'm going to find a 60 degree angle from this edge. I'm going to flip the whole works around and show you what you need to do on the other end. You have this extra flap. That whole thing's going to go, okay? That whole flap, we're just going to miter, again, at that 60 degree angle, or whatever angle you see fit. So this whole thing goes. And then I'm going to cut on those lines. Removing that entire tab. So now I have this triangular shape here, and I'll do the same on the other end of my accordion. Okay, now that I have these 2 tabs, you can see why I'm looking for this symmetrical appearance here. I've gotten rid of that extra little tab on one end. The other one won't have the tab because it's glued on here. And then you take those 2 prepared book covers, and I'm going to put the print on the outside. So I'll tuck this piece right in between the layers, and then this will also be tucked in between the layers. So now my covers are attached, and then to create the spine I will simply tuck the spine in between the layers. So now when I open my book, there's been no glue involved, and the whole thing can be pulled apart and looked at like an accordion. So that, my friends, is the beautiful glue-free book structure. Now let's test it for fit. So here's our book cover that we've had set aside, and then if you open it, the glue-free book fits right into the opening there. Now what you may want to do to train the book board or the folding board that you've used for the outside cover is to close it and then put a heavy object on it, you know, for a few hours or whatever, just to kind of get that paper trained, because it will eventually just hold itself closed. Yeah, it's doing a pretty good job right now. This is one that I've gone ahead and decorated. Now, where did I get these decorations from? Well, again, as I've said before, in pocket D, we have a bunch of stuff for decorating. Some of the elements in the pocket are sized perfectly, and others are just going to be extra pieces for you to use for finishing. So all of these pieces that are this size ratio have a bunch of mats. Some are printed, some are cream, plain. Some will be able to nest with one another, so make sure you sort out which ones are larger and which ones are smaller. And you'll be able to really play around with those while you decorate the inside of the book. That's this. And again, I've used that little leaf die cutting set that we have. If you want to add that, it just really gives you some nice potential. And then also in the kit, there are some cut-aparts. 2 whole sheets of cut-aparts and an extra piece of red paper. I added this so that you could use it for matting and then just creating a nice look for, you know, layering, whatever you want to use this for. It's completely up to you. These cut-aparts are designed to fit onto 12 by 12 layouts, and this is not 12 by 12. So what you'll need to do is modify them by trimming them to the appropriate size for them to fit within the book structure that you have. Also of note, there was unfortunately a typographical error that we did not miss before we went into production, but we caught it before we shipped. So here, this is a correction for one of those cut-apart strips in the set. All right, there's also a ribbon that you can use to tie around and make a beautiful 3-part bow for the front of your book. Okay, to make the 3-part bow, I got things started by trimming this image from the cut-apart sheet, which is just a wonderful size for the front cover of our book. Of course, you can use anything you want, and I measured that image. It came to 3 1/4 by 5 1/4. So from the large piece of red that you have left, I trimmed a 3 1/2 by 5 1/2 piece. I'll go ahead and adhere this onto the cardstock, so it just has a little bit more of a heavy feel to it. Okay, then you have this ribbon, and if you got the kit, it should be in there. And I'm going to trim off a length that's just wider than the cut apart. So just make sure it extends a little bit. And then you need to figure out, like, what size bow do I want? So, and make a double length of that size. So if I want my bow to reach here to here, I'll double that length with the ribbon. Let me get my ribbon scissors here and slice that. So this is a double thickness. What you'll do is take some tape and make a loop from that ribbon, just have it overlapping slightly, and tape the loop into place. And this is a nice wide ribbon, so whatever size tape you have, that should work just fine. Then you have a remaining piece. I like to put a little bit of tape on the end of it. And I like to make sure that the ribbon is going to want to, the grain of the ribbon is running in that circular position. So just take your little loop, center it on your original piece that you'd trimmed, flip it over, and tape this piece to it. And then wrap it around. If you want to just peek at it. Oh, it's so pretty. Make sure it's pretty firmly looped. And once again, you can tape that loop to the back. There will always be some leftover, as is the case here. So just trim away that leftover length so it's just all taped on the back. Oh, it's so sweet. So now all you need to do is grab, you do use a little bit of tape. Grab some additional tape, center it where you want it to be, bring those ends around to the back, and stick them down. And now your piece is ready for the front. Now what I did is anchored the front with one of the pieces that came from the D pocket for decorating. And I'll explain what I did to get this size of orange piece. There was an orange scrap of this width. It's from the inside pages. And I trimmed it into 2 half-inch strips. And the remaining inch strip of orange goes on the front. The height of the strip is 6 3/4. So I'm just going to go ahead and attach that. So this is 1 by 6 3/4. Normally I'd use my grid ruler to make sure I'm nice and level on that. And then you can attach this. Okay, that looks nice. All right, now what did I do with these? So I said I had these half-inch strips. I trimmed them into 2 strips at 5 inches long and 2 strips at 6.5 inches long. Now if you look at the inside of the book, we have this ivory or cream colored frame, and you can nest these pieces right onto the frame and they should fit perfectly. So just use your favorite adhesive or bookbinding glue to attach those little strips. Again, these are 1/2 inch wide. The long ones are 6.5 and the short ones are 5 inches. And that should make a perfect frame around this. Another great option for this would be to use the washi tape that was included if you're using this kit, the falling leaves washi tape around that perimeter, and then go ahead and decorate the cover. I think I'll spend just a little bit of our remaining time showing you how I finished this book. I added the Being Yourself quote, nested it with the 2-inch strip on the inside of this panel. Again, the height of that is 6 3/4. And then I used more scraps from the red and also from the D, the D envelope, along with the cut apart to finish the front. Here's some border strips. This, I just nested the print right onto the first page in the book. Here I've got a word splendid. Again, this was designed for a 12-inch page, but I just trimmed it down to fit perfectly. And that will be the case for incorporating any Club Scrap page kit. You can take the contents of the entire page kit, trim it according to the instructions to create your book structure, and then use the cut aparts and embellishments to finish the project. And that is the book and a faux book project. I hope you love this and that you're able to make a ton of them. It's just in time for the holiday gift giving season, so get ready, get these all put together, and Christmas will be ready in a snap. We'll see you next time.